The school is called the Siloam School. It's called that because back in the late 1800s, particularly after Reconstruction, there really weren't very many educational opportunities for black children. So this property was actually purchased by the Mecklenburg County Board of Education in 1903. They bought an acre of land here, and there was actually another building here. It wasn't actually this building. It's believed to have been a log cabin, a one-room schoolroom. This building was constructed 1920, 1921, sometime during that time period, because of the Rosenwald movement that was going on during this time period. Julius Rosenwald was the president and CEO of Sears Roebuck, which basically at that point in time was the Amazon of the early 1900s. And he used his personal finances for a variety of philanthropic opportunities. So he supported museums and education, but he really got focused on education for African Americans. He hooked up with Booker T. Washington of the Tuskegee Institute in about 1910, 1911. And the two of them together worked on an experiment to try to improve the students that were going to that school, Tuskegee Institute, as well as other institutions of higher learning for African Americans. In fact, this is the only remaining one-room schoolhouse from the Rosenwald era in Mecklenburg County. We've got so few historical assets of any type anymore in this county, particularly ones that are in excess of 100 years old. African American related historical assets are even fewer and rarer, and so it's very important to do that. This is going to be a working educational asset, and so this is going to be an opportunity for the people of Mecklenburg County, for the people of North Carolina, to be able to learn about the system of Jim Crow segregation that really covered the South during this time period, to learn about its effects, and to do so while sitting in a tangible manifestation of that Jim Crow segregation. So that opportunity in and of itself is incredibly rare. Fortunately, we've got a choice between losing this thing entirely or saving it by moving it, and that's what we're doing here in this situation.
I am elated. This is the culmination of so many people's efforts. And so we get to save the school, we get to save it from being destroyed, as so many of our historical artifacts are. Most important is that we get to show people in a very tangible way what it looked like to be educated in Mecklenburg County and probably across the South in the 1920s and 1930s. And you know, this is like 50 years after the Civil War, so that's not that long from when black people could not be educated to when they were able to build their own schools to provide a better education for their kids. And I think in these days and times it's very important for us to understand our history and to learn from it, because history always has something to teach us.
This is a small job, relatively speaking, but it's a big job because there's a lot of value to it historically. This is a complete restoration. This is going to go back to what the building looked like in 1920 when it was constructed. So period materials to the maximum extent that we can find those. On the restoration work on the exterior, so the siding and that sort of thing. All the nails in the exterior to make this as close to the absolute 1920 school that existed here. So at this point, they take the roof off and wrap the building up, and then the mover, the house mover, will come in here. He will jack the building up off the piers and put 3 or maybe 4 steel rails, I-beams, underneath the structure, and they will sit on wheels, trolleys, that will allow him to pull it down the street. At that point, then he'll take it to the building site at the museum. You know, it's about a 2.5 hour ride at the speeds he's going to make between here and the museum site, which is probably no more than about 6 miles away. They're good at what they do, and so I expect that we'll see the building over there around 2 o'clock in the morning.
We'll be taking the next 6 months to restore the school. They're starting with the foundation and the floorboards. You have to make sure your base is solid, and trying to use period materials to make sure that we restore this as accurately as possible. When I saw the school on the museum property, I was very excited and elated. It really represents the end of a lot of hard work by a lot of people to get to this point, and we're excited to restore it. It represents excellence in historic preservation and the new direction that the museum is headed in.
This building, of course, represents the fact that Mecklenburg has actually saved part of our history. Too often we don't save our history. And this is an opportunity for us to rejoice in the fact that it can be done, and that it can be done and used for a great purpose to help this community understand a lot about how we can live together, learn together, and prosper together.